Everyone, welcome back to In the Clouds podcast. I'm your host, Caroline, and today I'm with a special guest, Eleanor. She is a holistic nutritionist, and I'm really excited to chat with her and have you guys listen in on some of her advice today. I met Eleanor my freshman year at Florida Tech. She did an awesome talk with all the athletes there about nutrition, and a lot of what she said really resonated with me. So, like I said, I'm really excited to chat with her again, give you guys some insight on nutrition. So, Eleanor, you want to tell us a little about yourself, a little background?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to share a lot of what I've learned, both going through college and continuing education, but also as an athlete myself. I competed in Division I athletics for the University of North Florida and was nationally ranked in the women's steeplechase. Did very well in the 1500 as well. So I definitely was able to put into practice what I was learning throughout undergrad and into grad school with nutrition and really start to see how much that fundamental baseline of nutrition education could accelerate my performance and expedite recovery so that I could hit it harder and really improve that performance not only as a collegiate athlete but continuing into adulthood as a active career go-getter. um, so yeah, I did both undergrad and master's in nutrition and dietetics at the University of North Florida, and then went on to do another diploma with the International Olympic Committee. It's a 2-year research-based diploma, and started my practice in 2017, where I serve athletes of all ages and calibers, from people who are just getting started in athletics, high school athletes, all the way up to the professional level, where I worked with PGA Tour players and Jacksonville Jaguars um, along the way.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Um, what would you say is like something that kind of motivated you or kind of ignited your passion to like really take your nutrition seriously? Because I think a lot of why we might not consider how nutrition affects our play is like we just don't know the reason, or we just haven't seen it firsthand, like how it can really how what you fuel your body with can affect your performance. So what was that like turning point for you, would you say?
So I think, you know, a lot of people will come to nutrition for a specific reason. Usually they're experiencing a lot of fatigue. Maybe they've lost their menstrual cycle. Maybe they're getting injured or ill very frequently. So that's definitely a sign that nutrition is not being utilized to its most beneficial impact. But you know, I think people also kind of live at like this baseline of like you wake up, how you feel is how you feel, and you go about your day. And if you're constantly repeating the same habits, you're not really going to notice if you're feeling crummy or you aren't really in that great a shape. So it's kind of like if you go through a training program, at the beginning of the training program you might be super tired, you might be like sore from things, but you know it because you're working hard and you're really challenging your body to reach new heights. And ideally by the end of that season, that training program, you've noticed that you've gotten a lot stronger, a lot faster, you know fine-tuned your skill set with things. And nutrition, it can be very much the same way. um, I think a lot of times when people think nutrition, they're like, all right, we got to hit these macros and chicken, sweet potatoes, and broccoli every day. But just as your training isn't static, neither should your nutrition be. So it's really learning to embrace a more dynamic approach with nutrition and learn some essential tools to put in your tool case, if you will, that you can pull out and treat your body along the way. So whether you are working through increased inflammation, maybe you have a lot more muscle soreness that you need to address, maybe you're fading in a workout, or you're just not having the energy that you normally do. These are all great signs that we can utilize nutrition more effectively to improve that performance.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say it's definitely, would you say it's like there's like a general layout that people can follow, and then kind of make it more individualized to them? Because I know there's a lot of tools, like you can do like food journals and food logging and sensitivity tests, and you can really optimize like specific to your body, like what you need to feel the best. But for someone that's like just starting out on figuring out their nutrition and what's best for them, maybe they're not injured or anything, but they're just trying to use nutrition to their advantage, what's like a general kind of approach for that?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on the training load. Um, but in general, there's what's called the training plates. You can look it up online. So you have your easy day training plate where, maybe you're working out 30 minutes a day, or you're in a more of a recovery phase. So things are pretty light. Um, maybe you're even working out a few times a week. So this would be your easy day plate where half of that plate is dedicated to vegetables or fruit, depending on the meal. 20% is dedicated to carbohydrates, or 25% if you're just kind of maintaining weight, but 20 to 25% is to carbohydrates. So that's your whole grains, starchy vegetables, bread, pasta, things of that nature. And then about 25 to 30% of that plate is dedicated to protein. So that's your easy training plate. Maybe you're just kind of building into things. And then as you increase your intensity, you shift that plate. So you want more of a moderate training plate. So maybe you're doing 45 minutes a day of, moderate exercise. You're getting your heart rate up, but you're not like digging deep into the well, and you're not doing prolonged pieces of exercise. So that would look more like a peace sign where it's, 33, 33, 33, dispersion of carbohydrates, protein, and then produce. And then last but not least, if you're really starting to push your body, maybe you're doing 60 or more minutes a day of higher intensity exercise, that's where you're going to want half that plate is dedicated to the carbohydrate sources. And the reason for that shift in carbohydrate over time, you'll notice that the protein stays about the same, 20, 25 to 30%. Your carbohydrate and your vegetables are what are shifting. So that carbohydrate increases as your exercise output increases to support the training load, which, your body is running naturally on carbohydrates when you're exercising at intensity, whether it's stop and go or endurance workouts. And then it's also going to make up for the extra calories you're burning to help keep your body in homeostasis and support that hormone balance.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
on those, I had a question on my Instagram. Someone asked, like, on game days, how is that fuel different than like just a normal practice or a recovery day? But with the carbohydrate ratios, that's the only thing that's changing. Would you recommend? What about like those game days where you're like really breaking down your muscles? I would personally think like, oh, you need more protein, but are those carbohydrates refilling your muscles when they're like super depleted and super, torn down after a 2 hour game of, sprint and just crazy stuff. So
Yeah, so after a game day where you're working out for 2 hours and you have a lot of sprint and endurance activity in there, you are going to really want to focus on carbohydrate and protein. So the reason why we still would do that hard plate is because you want to be able to replenish those glycogen stores, especially if you know you're going to work out the next day. You want to be able to come back and recover quickly, but you also want a 1-to-3 or a 1-to-4 ratio of protein to carbohydrate. So that means that you have, 25 grams of protein and between 75 and 100 grams of carbohydrate in that recovery meal. And the reason for that is that carbohydrate is essential to bring the protein to the muscle and help you absorb it more effectively. For athletes who are only doing a protein powder right after a workout, it's only one small piece of a puzzle, and it's not going to give you the biggest bang for the buck, for the effort that you just did. So really backing those efforts up to a good meal is going to help give your body the tools that it needs to recover effectively. Um, so hopefully that answers your question.
yeah, it does for sure. What do you think about like sticking to the same meals, week by week, or maybe just the same meals before game days? Like, is it better for our bodies to know what's going in, and like, is it easier to digest, or is it, situation by situation? Like, is that different per person, or what would you say it's smart to like stick to the same, pregame meal routine, or is it okay to switch it up?
I would say you could switch it up each season, but if you're coming into championship season, by then you should have a pretty good laid out pre-game day meal that is going to sit well. Because the last thing you want to do is like, all right, we're going to have a bunch of spaghetti and then go out there and run and like have acid reflux from just housing a bunch of tomato sauce. So you want to have something that's tried and true, and that it's going to, give you a lot of energy to get out there and be strong. It's going to not cause any digestive distress, but it's also going to support, making sure that you're staying hydrated to help prolong that activity, and reduce your feelings of fatigue, and effort while you're out there.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
yeah, I would say keep it the same, but if you want to switch it up based on the season, I'm a big fan of like eat with eat with the season. So, if you do a smoothie in the summer and you decide to move up north, I'm assuming most of your listeners are from Florida, but if you're like up north in the winter, having a smoothie before you go out and play in cold environments might not be the best idea. Maybe you want to switch it up to a soup that is warmer, it can get your body up and running in a colder environment. So time and place, yes, but also knowing, what that season is looking like for you.
Yeah. I feel like it's good to kind of write down like what you're eating maybe, and then after see how you're performing, see how you feel.
Yeah.
I used to do that when I was in college. I would like track my food, and I mean I wouldn't do it every single time, but there was one specific time I remember I had like sweet potato fries for lunch or something, and I had like the best game ever that night. And I'm like, all right, that's going on my list. I sweet potatoes like every time. So yeah, I feel like it's just kind of trial and error to figure out what works. But um, yeah, there's definitely there's specific times that are like ideal to eat as far as like before practice and post practice. I remember your presentation a couple years ago. There was like certain recovery windows that you were recommending. So do you think you could walk through those?
Yeah, so in regards to pre-workout, the main goal of that is to top off your glycogen stores. So ideally you didn't fast the day before. So we're not starting from scratch, but we're just kind of topping things off, making sure you have enough energy on board to get you through. But also something that's going to keep you feeling light and energized and agile, not something that's going to really be slow to digest and sluggish and slowing you down. So that means that we're really carb focused, right before in the 3 hours before your workout. And depending on how much time you have and when your competition is. So if you're waking up at like, 5 a.m. to go practice or compete at 7, then that's going to be a little bit different, than if you have like a noon competition. So understanding when that is and utilizing practice to practice your pre-workout fueling. So, you could have a light lunch or something, let's say at noon, and you have practice at 6 p.m. So you could have lunch at noon, maybe have a snack around 3 that's a little bit more substantial, 2 or 300 calories, and then maybe you have something right before that practice within 45 minutes to top things off. So that could look like toast and jelly. It could look like applesauce, a banana with a little bit of peanut butter. Just kind of understanding your digestive system and how quick you metabolize that food and how well it sits. So some people are going to have really good tolerance, and can eat a lot beforehand. Some people are going to be pretty new to incorporating nutrition right before they work out and need to build up to it. But you can train your gut. So ideally, you want to be able to have at least 60 grams of carbohydrate within an hour before you work out to really just kind of top things off and make sure that you have enough fuel on board. The things that I see most common is people are under fueling because they want to be lean and they want to be light out there and be able to run fast. And then they peter out towards the end when it really, really matters, with, a game. So making sure that you have enough fuel on board, and that takes practice. And then after the workout, you want to have something within 45 minutes after you work out. So that's when you have this little magic window where your body is most receptive to uptaking nutrients. And after about 45, 60 minutes, you start to see that ability to absorb those nutrients peter off. So it just kind of decreases over time. So if you can't get a meal in that amount of time, at least try to have something, whether it's a peanut butter and jelly, maybe you're doing some yogurt with muesli and tart cherry juice mixed in, maybe you're having a Cliff Bar that you brought with you. So something with a little bit of protein and carbohydrates just to at least get you to the next meal, so you give your body some tools to work with. If you're like, I'm not that hungry right after, I never have an appetite, that's where I would really focus on having some liquid calories, because if you don't have something within 2 hours, it's basically like you just worked out and you didn't really do that much. And the likelihood of you being more sore and not getting stronger, you'll see a plateau in your performance is pretty high with individuals. And you might also see your susceptibility to upper respiratory infection increase. So especially as we're getting into cold and flu season right now, that's really a concern for a lot of athletes. If you look at people competing at the Olympic or um, world level, they're not going to be as sick as their counterparts who aren't competing as high. So we know that the biggest things that are going to decrease your performance is simply not being able to show up, either from illness or injury. So ways to prevent that: make sure your nutrition's on point, and then all the other little things like foam rolling, sleep, hydration, stress management as an athlete are absolutely essential if you really want to be the best at what you're doing.
Oh yeah. You always want to catch it before it happens too. You
Yeah.
don't want to get sick and then be like, "Oh, I should have feel better. I should have recovered better."
Yeah.
Um you were saying that, some people tend to underfuel before practice just so they can be light. What are some other like common things that you see, especially in like younger athletes, that um you maybe have different recommendations for? Something that you would say is like maybe misconceptions around nutrition? Are there certain things that you've found over the years?
Yeah, so I think one of the misconceptions is people focus on protein too much right before a workout. So some protein is beneficial to have in your pre-workout nutrition, but if you're just doing a straight up like protein shake, it's not going to be as useful for you as if you're doing, more of a whole food approach with carbohydrate as the main focus. So this could be, having a bowl of rice before you get out there, um, or something of that nature. The other thing that I see commonly is too much fat. So having a lot of fried foods before you go, maybe you're having an avocado because you're trying to be healthy. So that might not be the most appropriate time to have that right before you work out. Again, going back to those carbohydrate focused foods, something that's quick and easy and simple to digest. I mean, even if you wanted to do a little bit of candy right before you go work out, like you'll have some energy to burn off. And in that case, it's not necessarily a terrible idea. I know all the parents are like, really? Come on. But if you're going to have something like that, have it earlier in the day and then utilize that energy to propel your workout. And it works pretty well. I mean, that's what a lot of the sports products are, is just straight up candy. You think about goos and chomps and the little waffles and stuff, like that's
Yeah,
candy.
you look at the
Just in a
nutrition and it's
different
like all
form.
sugar.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like just sugar with,
three times
and
the
they just
price.
put electrolytes on it.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of times, like, we'll do dried fruit like mangoes or dates, or even just have people do like gummy bears or something like that. So you kind of find little things, and that's more within like 30 minutes that you incorporate it, or maybe it's during your practice or workout if you have a longer duration one, just so you have some quick digesting carbohydrates that are easy to get in and um, keep you fueled and moving forward with things.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah.
you talking about all the fried food and spaghetti and stuff, that reminded me of Michael Phelps. I remember they did a bit on him and his like 6,000 calorie diet that he used to do. And like he was eating like whole pizzas and spaghetti and literally whatever he wanted. I guess because he burned so many calories, but it might have been a misrepresentation of like what's actually healthy. But then again, he's like a record holding Olympian, so
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it worked for him.
And, you think about it, it's only just a snapshot in that athlete's life. And I feel like people are pretty fluid with their diet. And sometimes, like, stress, environment, people who are influencing them can have a big role in the foods that they consume regularly. Even just like seasonal. Like right now, we have a bunch of persimmons and pomegranates in season. So that's come into our diet quite frequently. And we also have like winter squash and kale. So unless you're eating from Pizza Hut every day, like ideally your menu should change with the season and what's most nutrient dense and being harvested at its peak ripeness. Because, if we're pulling, like if we're eating watermelon in the winter, there's something wrong with it. One, it's not going to taste as good, but two, you don't have as much nutrients that's been able to build up in that food because it's not harvested at its peak season. So really paying attention to what's in season locally for you can maximize your ability to nourish your body. Um, unfortunately, Fortunately and unfortunately, we have food year round in the States. Like if you go and travel anywhere else, you can see like in Europe in the winter, like they're eating like bread and meat and cheese all the time. And same with Japan, they're noodles, rice, and fish and meat in the winter. But like come spring and summer, you see a lot more like greens and berries and things of that nature. So they're really capitalizing on the foods that are actually available to them locally, as opposed to harvesting foods out of season and then using more chemical means to actually bring them to ripeness, which can result in a third of the amount of nutrients in that same apple as you would have get it if it was in season.
Yeah, it's wild that we still have access to a lot of different fruits and veggies, even though they're not in season. I just recently like went down a rabbit hole with that. I was like,
Mhm.
wait, these are seasonal fruits and these
Yeah,
I don't know, there's just
it's a
it's
blessing
cool though.
in
There's
a
a lot
lot
of
of ways,
resources
but
to
it's
figure out
it's
like
kind of wild.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm a
But
big fan of farmers markets and like farm boxes and stuff. If you can order one and be able to afford it, I think it's absolutely fabulous and the food is so much better. It lasts longer too.
yeah. Yeah, I'll
Mhm.
have to try that. It's definitely a pricey lifestyle, but
Yeah, I always joke I'd rather pay for my health care on the front end than on the back end because it's a lot cheaper.
that's true. That's a good point.
Mhm.
Um
Yeah.
yeah. So something that I do remember from your presentation as well was the fact that there's kind of different, I guess, nutrition plans or diets that you can have based on your sport. So, like, say, like cross country, which is an endurance sport, versus lacrosse, which I think was like it was considered a stop and go sport just because you're
Mhm.
running and then you're kind of jogging or walking sometimes. So, what would you say that some people that are listening that are probably lacrosse players could consider for the sport specifically to focus on for their nutrition?
Well, your competitions are 2 hours long, right?
Yeah, two and a half.
Yeah. So they're still pretty long. And the nice part about that is you have time to refuel during that event. So arguably your events are longer than most cross country races, which can last, 15 to 25 minutes, depending on how fast you are. Um, and the fueling for that would be different. So you almost want like a trickle feed while you're out there and just kind of have like a little bit of something, whether it's like a sports drink to keep you going. But 2.5 hours, that's a long bit, especially if you're out there most of the time. But if you're out there for like 45 minutes, your pre-workout can get you through. But I think really focusing on little 15 to 30 minute, like five to 15 minute even, snacks that can digest in that amount of time. So applesauce, banana slices, the dried fruit we talked about, even like we would do like shots of honey before a workout like that. Little things like that that are going to be really easy for you to nibble on in between being out on the field, and that can really help. And also having some variety in there. So maybe you have like pretzels or crackers, so you don't get flavor fatigue. Because at the end of the day, like what you're really wanting to do is outlast the competition, keep your skill set high. So, hydration and that cognitive function is really essential. And then you obviously want to be able to run harder and faster than all of them. So it's a pain tolerance as well. So, you know, you could even utilize some caffeine to up that pain tolerance and kind of mask it a bit, depending on how you react to caffeine. Some people are good at it, some people are not. And for youth athletes, I would say if you don't use caffeine yet, hold off. Because some people, like I said, react really well to it and it helps them. Some people get really jittery and it's not that beneficial. And you can actually build up a tolerance to caffeine if you're incorporating it too soon or too quickly, and it can be very disruptive to your sleep. So caffeine's a drug. It's widely used, one of the most widely used drugs around, but it doesn't mean it's the most beneficial. So it's actually dependent on your genetic code on whether you actually will perform better or worse off of caffeine. So kind of going back to your journaling exercise, paying attention to what foods you integrate and how you feel after. So what is your energy level that day? What's your mood like? How well did you sleep? How hydrated are you? So it's funny because we do a lot of research in the supplement world, but when it comes to nutrition, there's so many little avenues that can impact that. Um, and impact that performance in addition to the food that you're consuming. So that's where really keeping a detailed log and being very reflective after practices, after games, and even having a little system of, how well you slept, what's your mood like that day, energy levels, do you have any other stressors in your life? Maybe you're going through exams, maybe you're moving, whatever. And then what did you feel with that day to help you have a better understanding of things? And then if you notice things like you're bloated, you're really fatigued all the time, you're having, mood irregularities, you're missing your cycle, those are signs that you should do some deeper work, probably with myself or another sports dietitian who is qualified to help you.
I did not realize caffeine was like is it because it's a stimulant that it decreases your pain levels, or is that just a double?
It's perceived pain. So yeah, because it's a stimulant, it can decrease pain levels. I'm kind of borderline personally on if I like caffeine or not for exercise because it elevates my heart rate a lot. Um, so if I'm doing like longer distance stuff, like you have to be very dose sensitive to how much you're bringing on because a lot of like the energy drinks and the caffeine pills and stuff, they can have a significant amount of caffeine in there, and it's not always that beneficial. And how fast you metabolize that caffeine, do you have it on an empty stomach, do you have it on a full stomach, that all plays a big role in how it impacts your body. um
That's
so
interesting. So if it were to like elevate your heart rate, do you think it'd be better for like weightlifting or kind of like a
Well,
low?
beneficial effects on caffeine with weightlifting are they're not significant. The only area where we're seeing it actually be beneficial is more for the endurance sports.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's why you'll see like a lot of goos and gels have between like 40 and 100 milligrams of caffeine. But you have to remember your typical cup of coffee is between 70 and 120. So if you go and have an energy drink that has 300 milligrams of caffeine, you're going to be pretty jacked up and like ready to go. But if you're doing that at night, you're not going to sleep. So your recovery is going to be drastically impaired. And you'll actually increase your risk for getting sick. So it's kind of like, is is it worth it to integrate that? And when is it appropriate to integrate it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I gotcha. Yeah, circling back to kind of the refueling during games. I guess the 2.5 hours I kind of factored in like warming up to that, but we do have 15-minute quarters, so I think it would be ideal to at least have something on hand like gels or gummies or I guess just Gatorade for that refueling in those 15-minute periods. I remember my trainer used to make us these, um, she called them cocktails, and it was like ibuprofen, electrolytes, and it was like Gatorade all mixed together. It tasted like the ocean, like it was the saltiest thing ever. But it really helps you get through the whole game because especially as a midfielder, there were times where you know you're running the whole 15 minutes. Like a lot of games could be slower or they could be back and forth the whole time. Like it just depends on who you're playing. So yeah, definitely being prepared and just having the you know electrolytes and the energy gels or something on hand is definitely smart. And
Yeah.
it depends on where you are. If you're in college, you probably have someone that's providing you with like the Gatorade chews or Gatorade or something like that. But
Mhm.
just having stuff like in your lacrosse bag,
Yeah.
for those listening, that'll be helpful.
And I also encourage having some whole foods in there, like the dried pineapple, dried mango, dates, just so you have some alternative options. I think sports foods definitely get a big highlight on things, but you know, the nutrient density of that is there's not much in it. So it's kind of like if you're doing that every day and that's a staple of your diet, what is your dental health looking like? Are we adding any added stress on the body that's not necessary? Can we actually utilize more whole foods and get a bigger bang for our buck while also having a dose of vitamin C or beta carotene to support anti-inflammatory processes? Um, and then also a word of wise on ibuprofen, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories or NSAIDs. If you use them on a regular basis, that chronic use can actually erode your intestinal lining. So we see a lot of leaky gut as a result of that. So that means that the tight gap junctions in in your intestine start to open up with inflammation. So you start to have larger particles of food get through that tight gap junction. And so that can actually cause digestive irritability and food allergies or sensitivities down the road if it's unchecked. So if you do have like soreness or inflammation, try utilizing some more whole food options like tart cherry juice is exceptionally well researched. You can also try black currant. You can do like arnica gel topically. So look for some alternative options before you reach for the ibuprofen, or simply like ask yourself like, have I had enough water today? Why am I actually taking this? And understand, the intention why you're reaching for that, and see if you can find some alternative therapies before you go for more of the heavy hitting options.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think those the medications they're like effective, but then it's like your body it's not really natural to your body. So the more you teach your body to like help naturally heal and recover and perform, like the better off you're gonna feel and be in the end. Um, are there any like supplements that you would recommend, or would you kind of just recommend sticking to the whole foods as far as recovery? Because I personally didn't really dabble in any supplements like when I was playing in college, just because I guess I didn't really know about it. I didn't feel like I was like deficient in anything, but
Mhm.
um, if you could provide any recommendations or something as far as that goes, that'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
So when it comes to supplementation, I like to be very specific for why we're integrating it. Um, Before ever integrating any supplements, I like to think about it like a pyramid. So the base of that pyramid should be a good, healthy diet. If you are struggling with your diet, or you can improve more there, I wouldn't even bother going to the supplements because they should be supplementing a good diet. Your ability to have a strong impact on your health, performance, and both physical and cognitive outcome is going to be dampened if that dietary pillar there at the bottom is not up to speed. The second component of that pyramid is going to be your timing and dose of the food, and also some lifestyle factors incorporated into there. So stress management. So this can include like breath work, meditation, even visualization to really see that improvement. In addition to the timing of your food. So working with a schedule, kind of having some strategies there. And then last but not least, if you've accomplished all that, then I would bring in supplements. But even at the end of the day, there's only a handful that are actually effective and legal for you to integrate. So caffeine would be one of them, and creatine was another. But if you're relying on supplements, like let's say your breakfast consists of whey protein powder before you go out the door, I would encourage you to reconsider that. So if you have a supplement as a daily component of your lifestyle, how can we refresh that ritual of yours to incorporate more whole food that has a higher nutrient density that's going to be able to prevent injury, illness, and deficiencies later in the season?
Awesome. If you have any resources that you wanted to put out there, or if you wanted to plug your Instagram or anything related to your nutrition coaching, feel free. I think that was all the questions that I really wanted to go over, and I had a couple people submit them on the polls, and I think we ran through all of them. So
Love it. Yeah. So I'm always putting up tons of educational resources on my Instagram and blog. So Instagram or social media is elevated.nutrition. So you can find lots of blog posts on there, reels. We're also putting out freebies. I do have a educational class series from how to strengthen your bones, reduce illness, and improve your performance in a variety of ways. So each month we'll have a different class, and then we also have some programs you can walk through yourself. So it could be a pre-recorded class, and you get access to recipe collections and example meal plans. So that's kind of your baseline thing. You can also do our group coaching programs. You can talk with your coach and have me come out and do a personalized program for your team. So I do offer that to a variety of club teams, training centers, and colleges. And then last but not least, if you really want to fine-tune things with yourself, I'm happy to do one-on-one coaching with you. We also offer testing services for a more in-depth review. So from blood work to stool samples, we can do it all.
thank you so much for that. I really enjoyed this conversation today too. I think it'll be very helpful for our listeners, and I know I learned a lot too as well. So really appreciate you coming on here. And for everyone listening, feel free to leave a comment or review and what you thought, and catch you guys next time. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you so much for having me. And again, if you need any more information, check out elevatednutritionandwellness.com. Always happy to answer questions and connect with you guys. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be on.